Welcome, friends. It's another fine Monday morning, but it's more importantly, another episode of the on.net live show. Our mission here is to empower you, the .net community, to achieve more. I'm your host, Scott Addie, and I'm joined by co-host David Pine.
Good morning, friends.
Our friend Swamy joins the show again today. Super excited to have him back. Swamy, for folks that maybe didn't watch the last time you were on, could you briefly introduce yourself?
Hey, hi. This is Swamy. I operated from India, and I'm pretty much interested in learn and share the knowledge. So that's me.
All right. And as I mentioned, or you mentioned, you're super excited to share your knowledge. We're excited to have you here again. Why don't we kind of brief the audience on what to expect today? My understanding is we're going to start off talking about minimal APIs. Why don't we start there, and we'll see what questions we get from the audience.
Correct. So what we will do is, so we'll start with the introduction to the minimal API. So 30,000 plus food, and then we'll see how to create this minimal API. There are a couple ways we can create using the .NET CLI that we will real quick we'll see that, and then we will see how do we create the minimal API using Visual Studio 2022. with the empty web template. That's one way. Another one is unchecked. Do a comparison of HTTP request response pipeline. Come and see use the base entity inherit in different entities and sending the unified response. We'll see that, and we can compare this minimal API with the Node.js. Like with 3 lines, we'll expose the Node.js API with the first endpoint. Similarly, right now the .NET is doing the same thing with this minimal API. With these 3 lines, we will be able to spin up the server and hit the first endpoint. Then couple of real cool tips coming in from the EF core, and how can we access the connection string. We don't need to go and directly get the connection string and give it to this one. All we can do it, give it this way. I'll come back to this. This itself has a capability and power to read the app settings connection string. And if you're using the EF core migration, what kind of problems you will face it. I'll show you that. How do you investigate and how do you hit this URL? Thanks to Julio Castle, who helped me with this command. And we'll see that how do you create endpoints, how do you create it manually, and how can you scaffold it, creating it. And final is we'll look into Angular 15, hitting the minimal API. You can see that I kept this running. That is going to hit the endpoint, which I have deployed it to. I piled up, and in between we'll look into the deep dive into dependency injection. We'll understand if some of the class is asking a dependency injection, who's the guy who holds this, how does this dependencies are getting injected. We'll do a deep dive of that. So that's what is for this show. Back to
That's a lot of ground to cover. So I know I'm excited to dig in. Let's start at the top. You mentioned minimal API. Let's just start the conversation there. And again, I expect we'll get questions and we'll answer as many of those as we can.
Sure. So other thing is I have given an appendix A where you can go and browse it. So this guy, these are the URLs which I don't want to derail from the minimal API. So this speaks about SOAP over XML, the classic. We did the API in 2002 and 2003, SOAP over XML with the .NET framework. And then what is APIs? Things which are exposed on HTTP, plain HTTP, and what is Web API, which is coming in from the REST framework. And I've given all these details, so I just don't want to derail. So I've given a detailed URLs where you can go and understand what HTTP was, what is the 100 series, 200 series, 300 series, client errors, server errors, those HTTP responses, which one we should use it. So if you see this minimal API, so the minimal API is API where you don't need big controllers and lot of unnecessary DLLs. It's like a minimal thing. When I compare these 3 lines with the Node.js, it's exactly the same. Like you Node over Express, and similarly with these 3 lines, we are exposing the endpoint or the server side app. Similarly, we can do that. The simplified approach of this one. Okay, so that's one thing. And first we will see that how do you create the minimal API. So I just want to get into some place. I'll come in here. I'll create a folder called source. So it will be easy for us to go and create all these samples here real quick. So I'm copying this and I'm going into terminal. This is the one I really like, where we can have this multiple these things. Okay. So coming back to the first command, I can specify this .NET .NET new list. So that gives all the templates, and couple of templates which is of our interest is these two which I have highlighted. So one of the things is we can specify ASP.NET Core empty template that comes under web. Another one is ASP.NET Core Web API, and that we have to explicitly specify that we need minimal API. And also C# is the default language for all these things, and you can explicitly specify if you need any other framework. So first let's hit this. Here we are creating a web that is empty template. So when we come and see that the empty template, where am I? Okay, that's the dry run. This is another thing which I really liked it, .NET bringing in this. This we used to use in Angular. So when ng generate component, the component name dry run. So that doesn't create the resources, but it specifies what is that it's going to create. So this is a pretty cool feature. I love this feature seeing in .NET. And another thing is very similar to the Node.js API, which I created. Now I'm feeling very, very happy to see these two coming into the .NET world. Now, if you see this, the minimal API, it's pretty much a minimal in the sense it has got nothing in here. If you come and see this, just a couple of lines, like it says that create builder and build it and start. That's it. Now, if I come in here into this terminal, wow. So I don't need to come into that terminal. I can cd first sample. I do .NET run. So when I do a .NET run, that goes and executes the executes this minimal API.
It seems like we're breaking up again a little bit. You probably weren't familiar with this before, Swamy, but at the beginning of the show, some of your audio was breaking up.
To access this, there are a couple of
some of our viewers are saying it's choppy again, the audio.
Yeah, thanks for letting us know. We're seeing that on our end as well.
I'm curious, Swamy, if you might isolate some of the resources on your machine here. It seems like you're running multiple instances of Visual Studio and terminals and Visual Studio Preview and Visual Studio Code and multiple browsers and Excel and Power BI and all sorts of things. It might help if we close a few things that aren't necessary, but don't close StreamYard tab.
While Swamy is working on that, one thing I wanted to mention for folks that are seeing these minimal APIs for the very first time, one benefit here, aside from
the
fewer files, is it's making API development more approachable in .NET. It's less of a yard sale look now. It's more of a, hey, it's a single file. All of your endpoints can be defined in there. Again, that's the only place you need to look.
Yeah, and so when Swamy was running .NET run from the command line, essentially what that's going to do is it's going to first build the application. It's going to restore all the NuGet packages, compile the .NET executable, and then it's going to actually launch it and then serve up on the local host, as you see there.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So if you see this, it is executing. Is my voice audible? Scott?
Looks good now.
You're good. Yep.
Hello.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, 190 Mbps. Okay, so what is happening is it is executing on HTTP. When we execute the same thing in VS 2022, it executes on HTTPS. So what is that? Why is this magic? So when we come here to the launch settings, so the launch settings is the one which goes and executes the first URL which we see in here. So that is the reason it is going to pick up this. So there is a shortcut which we can specify. So .NET run -lp HTTPS. So when we specify the launch profile, so inside this launch settings, there'll be few launch profiles. One is for HTTP, one is for HTTPS, one is for IIS Express. And if we include the Docker, we'll have a Docker profile also. But when you see this, when we execute .NET run from the console or this command line, or from VS terminal, it goes and picks up the first launch profile. So if you want to execute it on HTTPS, we have to specify this tag -lp HTTPS. So now we'll be able to hit this guy over HTTPS. So that's one cool tip here. So let's go to the next way to do this. So this is the web app template. That is empty web app template. Okay. So now let's see. I'll close this so that I'll get extra space. I can come back and look at it. Okay. The next thing we will see is we are taking the web API template. We are not touching the empty web app, but we are taking the web API template. Oh, Jesus. Let me use the dry run. I can't resist. I'm so happy to see this. Even if I do some action which might create files, I can anyway delete those files, but still I love seeing these two features. Thanks to all the architects and whoever worked on this. So let's come back to the second sample and see this here. So when we see the second sample, this is API template. It's not the web app template. That's the empty web app templates and API template. And again, the rules of the games are same. So when you execute it from the command line, you'll see the first profile getting picked up, and you need to execute any of those profiles. You have to specify with LP launch profile. And here it will be a little bit bigger because Microsoft's Web API team was so kind enough that they have included a hello world of endpoint. So they created the record, including the summaries. They exposed the endpoint. We'll see about these things. And also they created a record. And we are also using the record. We'll compare why do we need to use record and unified from now. But I would like to show this real quick. And I didn't use that launch profile. It's my mistake. They exposed this endpoint. You can see that just a weather forecast. So we can come back over here and write it like a weather forecast. And if you want to add any of the endpoint, it's not at all a big deal. So all we can come in here and we can say that app.mapget. I'll say that when someone comes to the route, I will specify please. Yep. Ooh. Cool. So that's what was there in my mind. Copilot is reading my mind. I'm a little worried. I'll stop thinking. I don't know what I think something and suddenly it pops up on the screen. Now you guys will ask, Swamy, you didn't code it. I said that's GitHub Copilot is doing it. It's not my mistake. So even if I'm coming in here, see that it's just one line. I exposed it. If someone navigates it, previously we saw a yellow screen of death kind of thing. Now we are coming in here and happily it says that, hey, go somewhere. It's like a redirection. So that's a pretty cool feature. So now what I'll do is I'll come back to this one. Let me close it. I'll be switching between multiple projects. So I was playing around a lot. So I'm creating this project in the
Swamy, let's take a second to kind of recap what we've gone through this so far. So we're looking at minimal API. We're kind of talking through some of the templates that are available and explaining some of the benefits as to why you might consider using them, conceptually, how easy they are to expand upon the templates that are there. And I think we're going to start talking about Entity Framework you had mentioned before. Is that correct?
Oh, I want to show this, then I will show those. I want to compare, and the next parameter is this one.
Okay, perfect.
It's 10 minutes away from Entity Framework.
Oh, no worries, no worries.
Cool.
I wasn't worried about the time. I just want to make sure that we're setting the context.
Oh yeah, yeah. So first, I'm just covering a lot of ground on the Web API side before jumping onto the EF core in Angular. So here I'll come to web app, and in this web app there will be an empty template.
So one thing I'm noticing, Swamy, is that you're jumping between using the .NET CLI and Visual Studio Code and even Visual Studio proper. So
Right. So why I am mixing is when I use the .NET CLI. So I'm showing this .NET CLI for the folks who are coming in from the Linux world and mostly from the iOS or Mac OS world. So I'm showing you can use that. And for the people who doesn't have the Visual Studio subscription, even they are covered, they can use the CLI in combination with VS Code. And now people who have the VS Code Visual Studio subscription, they can go ahead with this. So I'm covering all the operating systems. David, anything else, David?
No, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, so web app empty template. So I'll just show you, but we'll directly go ahead with the Web API and the Web API one, because that's where there's a lot of discussion. Okay, I will call it as sample one. And we'll work on sample one and sample two, then we'll compare. See, right now, uncheck this to use the minimal API. So sample one is we'll use the minimal API, and we'll use the top level statements. So we'll execute this, and the next sample will create. We have created this one, and that it created the same template, which was here. And another instance of this Visual Studio preview, and there we will create a full-blown controller, and we will spend 10 minutes or 5 minutes time here to do a comparison. Why the minimal API is faster. It's my independent analysis, or this is what I'm thinking. I might be wrong. I might be 100% wrong, but this is what I'm thinking why it is. So I just want to show you that. I'm calling this as sample 2. And this time I'm coming in here. And I'm saying that use full-blown controller. And then again, I'm using the top level statements, and it is creating. So there is another
It seems like resource constraints now with Visual Studio spinning up the template. So
which I'm going to give now. Let me switch back to this VS Code. So when we create a class, and it should have a static main, so it knows that it has to create program dot main. So where is this? So for us, the framework itself is going to create it. So how does that look? We'll go and see that in a minute. If I come in here, let me go to the debug and the .NET 8. And if I select this second sample, it decompiled it. When we go to this one, you see, this is where we have our program class. So by default, when you use the top level statements, the framework will take care of creating the program class and the static main. So even though you're not seeing the static main here, but you're covered, it's going to take care of that. See, this compiler will generate an internal class of program, and it will have the main method with $. So this a bonus or a tip. So let me come back. Let's do an analysis of why folks are telling that minimal API is faster. So let's compare the web API with minimal API and full-blown controller API. I'm calling full-blown controller API. This is my own terminology. Apologize if I'm hurting someone. So the first thing is, imagine a same athlete. He has a backpack with 10 lbs. He's running 100 meters. And the same athlete has got 15 lbs in his backpack and is running. So that's my first thought. So before even we start anything over here, okay? So if I execute this is minimal API, folks. This is the first template is minimal API. So what is that out of the box dependencies which are getting loaded in the dependency service collection or the dependency container, whatever the term it is? I'm calling it as a container, where all the dependencies which are coming in out of the box. So by default, if you see that in the service collection libraries which are coming in, I'm calling it as out of the box for lack of better term. Okay, in minimal API it is 90. Let's come back and do the same here. Before even we start anything, we'll see what, and also we'll check at what is that the number of dependencies which are getting injected or coming out of the box just before we create the app. Okay, that was 90. Minimal API is 90. And let's see this. When I come in, okay, let's wait here. And let's see how many. It's 194. Okay, it's 194. I think I should have stopped it there. Apologies, I wasted 1 minute. So that's 190 just before creating the app. Now, when I execute in the minimal API, and is holding, so it is holding 103. So from the space perspective, it's 103 dependencies and 190 dependencies. So that's the first one of this. And the second comparison, what I'm doing is the middleware comparison. When we come to the HTTP request response pipeline, so we know that we have to pass through one middleware after another middleware after another middleware when someone's sending the response or exception. we have to go through this middleware. There's one good diagram. If you see this, if we have to traverse through all these things, imagine a scenario, some athlete is running 100 meters and there is a hurdles in between. Okay, so each of the hurdle, he has to take few milliseconds. Imagine the same thing. The number of dependencies, service collection is like having a backpack and he's running 100 meters. There are hurdles. Like I come to this one, exception handler or HTTP request or static pipeline or routing, CORS, authentication, and it goes to the controller. And sometime endpoint, you see this, you're not jumping through all the hurdles. There is no hurdles for you. You come here, directly go to the endpoint, spit the response out. So you see this here. If you come in here and if you come in here and let me show you that school service. I want to show you that. That's real cool. I really love that. Serilog, yeah, this is the one. Let me ping this log and we will see this. This will be pretty cool. Let's log it. Same thing under development. I'll see this. I'll execute it. This is the minimal API. So you have a shorter distance to run and you are carrying less weight in your backpack. So definitely you will be faster. So let's go and hit this guy, and it's a Swagger. And let's see this, seeing some of this things here. And if I come in and try it out, and we'll see, this is where here, the Swagger JSON. I click on execute and see this, what is happening. It started with this hosting and it goes to the endpoint and the endpoint gets executed. Cool, that's it. So now let's see what is this happening in the controller. Come in here, paste it, and let me paste the same thing here. Now let's go and edit it. And again, I'll give another tip. So let's wait. Let it give it. Oh, Jesus, I forgot to remove that. Now, that's executing it here. Now you see it will spit a lot of the. Now you see some of the middlewares here, static file. And I'm not telling that definitely we are doing a hurdles jump in between, but at least from the request response pipeline perspective, if you see that here, we came to this endpoint and then he's checking the controller. It found that method, it's calling it, and it's generating the object result and then passing it here. Now, when you compare these two at a high level, what we see is the minimal API is running shorter distance, as well as the controller is going through. At least we have seen this one piece static. So that 2 points, the 0.3 and 0.4, when we do the service collection, 103 versus 190, as well as the HTTP request pipeline, we spit out the logs and we verified it. So you're carrying the less luggage on your backpack and you're running some distance, but with less number of hurdles. Each hurdle you jump few milliseconds, right? So each of this request response pipeline or the middleware which you have to pass through, so consume some milliseconds, obviously. So it will be definitely faster. And now I think I will close these two, and I might open in after some time, but let's open. I'll close this one. So let's go to the next point, is the good citizens. Like the minimal API project, which I would like to show you here. I mean, I did it multiple rounds, practicing myself. So if you see this here, so some of the things which we have to inject it from the pipeline, some of the things, from the query string, some of the things will come from the route, something will come as part of the body. So the parameters will come from different places. And the framework has got enough intelligence to identify and pick it and do a binding. But why do I need to write it explicitly? This will help if I'm in team, and definitely I'll be in team. So others will know that where they have to give. Suppose if I give this code and ask them to use a postman and execute it, how do they know that? If I write it like a string and name, are they putting it in the route, or do they need to put it as part of the query parameters? Here it is a mix. I need to send a string ID as part of the route and the name as part of the query string. So being explicit will help our team members. Okay, so let's execute and see this for a minute.
Swamy, real quick, we do have a question here from one of our live viewers.
Yes, sir.
They're specifically asking, can you add all the features supported by API controllers to minimal API?
Good question. I'll come to that. Just give me 1 minute. I'll take that question. Oh, the world is against me today. My box is so slow today. God. See, I have a 200 Mbps speed.
I can only assume it has to do with lots of the other resources on your machine.
I know. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So you see this, it's coming in. So something which I need to pass as part of the path here in the route, and something I need to pass as part of the query string. I say that P101 and Privaru, and I click on execute. It gives me a response here. Okay, that's one thing. So another important thing here is the unified response. So another important thing is unified response is something in the data. And again, this I stole it from the Node.js API when I was working. I like this concept very much. Like, see this, anything which I expect, it should be in the data, whether whatever it is, like get all courses or get course by ID or delete a course, add a course, or do anything. I just want the unified response. So if you see that success or whatever the other attributes which I'm sending in executed, as well as the correlation ID, I might pass anything. But what is very important, whether I'm sending a collection of entities or DTOs or a single DTO or some message, true or false, Boolean, whatever it is. If it is a single place where I need to look, it will be easy to set a contract between them. Okay, thanks. So now I'll come back to the question. The question was, can we add all the things which I have been doing in controller in minimal API? Am I right? Is that the question?
Yes.
Okay. So see this. It is just an endpoint. So see this. We have a layered architecture. The same API I created with big ball of mud and all-in-one architecture. So I have the business logic layer, application core, configuration, data entities and DTOs and persistence, including repositories. This is all in one architecture. the project is there. I have different folders. I moved all the files respective to a different layers into the folders. So this is all-in-one architecture. And similarly, if I split these libraries maybe to repositories and to persistence, to endpoints and data, business layer and application layer, the layered architecture. But net, what is very important is you are hitting an endpoint. And endpoint is hitting the business logic layer or some other layer, which goes and hits the repository layer, which again goes and hits the data DB context. With this, I assume that whatever you are able to do it with the controller endpoint, it's an action method. End of the day, you have a controller and it is hitting a action method. I know that some of the things, like if you have this API controller, that attribute, that itself will take care of is the model object is valid or not. So here also all those things are available for us. So if at all some of the features, which is very specifically like a base controller, you can again come back here and you have an endpoints. So it's an extension method which we are writing. We might be losing some of the benefits. I'm really not sure. But what from my perspective, we are writing an action method. So we don't write any logic in the action method. Action method will just pass the data or inputs to the business logic layer. From there, it goes to the repository to data context, and reverse way. And according to this, I assume that we don't lose it. Apart from something which is very specific to the controllers, from my independent analysis or from my way of thinking, I think that you're eating an action method and you're sending the response out. Anything to add on this, David or Scott?
We had a related question.
Yes,
when
please.
you ran the application, there was a Swagger test page that came up, and this particular viewer, Douglas, is wondering, what was it you did in your application to enable that Swagger UI page?
Yes, it is coming in next. It is 2 steps away. Douglas, I'm going to answer it. Just give me, we are going to cover 2 more steps. We will be there. Is it fine, Scott?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So the next thing is, let's discuss about the entities and DTOs. So if you see this, whether any object, generally we'll have the ID. It will be GUID or something. And here very specifically, you have a course ID, but generally these are the auditing kind of fields, or just to track that who created first, who updated. This doesn't need to be shown to the client, but definitely we need it. So one of the best practice is to have a abstract class. Some of the authors which I was watching those videos, they use interface. Some people, they use abstract class. I think abstract class makes sense. We have those auditing fields and start using in different entity objects. Now, if you see this, very simple, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It has got 5 fields which are important if I'm showing it on an Angular UI. And if I include these 5 fields, so it will become 10 fields. So when I'm spitting it out using the DTO, so I'll spit only what is needed, like GUID is needed, and I need to send the course ID, name, duration, course type, and description. But I don't need to send the who created, when, who modified, when did they modify. Another thing is, this is the class or record. This is a record. Whenever you are spitting something, better to use record for the performance benefits, because it's an immutable. Once you create it, you don't need to modify this. Okay. So now coming back to Douglas' query, Douglas, here is the 2 lines which you have to these 2 lines you have to write it, Douglas. When I come in here, third-party services. So you have to write these 2 lines. That's it. Add endpoint API Explorer, add Swagger Gen. Okay. When we'll create a minimal. Oh, we created the minimal API, isn't it? Just now we created. Let me come in here in the second template. I think this guy should have it. If not, I'll show. We'll create one. See this. By default, it comes. We created this using the command line. Even the command line by default it includes this Swagger. And we did this sample, and we added this endpoint to hit at the route and say that go and use it. So, but still the Swagger is enabled here, and better to enable Swagger at the development side. That means when you're in development mode, not in test or any other place. So let me give you another tip. If I have this Swagger, which is exposing multiple endpoints, and I want that to be in my Postman. So there is a shortcut way. I'll show you the longer way. This from my Azure Open. Let me close this. I think I can use this. Okay, so this is Swagger. So it's beautifully, it has got 3 different things. So all we have to do is click on this, copy this Swagger, come back to the Postman and click on import, and okay, so import this, and it is importing. See how beautifully this guy does its job. I mean, the coordination between different tooling. For us to create this level of thing, it takes a lot of time. Imagine, see this, how beautifully they crafted this. And they know that where to go. Okay, see this. This is for the V1. This is for the users. Under API, I get user. So this is get user by ID. All the actions, get or post or delete, will be put into that. And something which is beautifully they crafted. This is another tip where you expose this for dev and you don't expose it in prod, test, QA, prod different environments. What you can do is take this Open API, import it in the Postman. Now go ahead and change it. See this guy, intelligently he will create a field also where you can go and update it. Like if you see the variables, the base URL. So if it is localhost, you write the localhost. If it is dev environment, you write the dev environment. But in localhost and dev, you have the Swagger. And going a little bit further, you don't have the Swagger. So write that. Now you can hit any environment. It's another tip. Now it's an interesting thing. EF core tips. I really love this. Seriously. See this previously, and I need to thank these authors, Julia Lurban, Julio Castle, Praveen Kumar Bona, Tarvar Williams. So I was watching their videos and learned many of these things. Particularly this tip I learned 3 days ago in Julia Lurban's course. See this, when you're using the SQL Server or SQLite or any of the supported EF core, previously we used to get this EF core and then include the SQL Server. Now you don't need to do that. I didn't know this. Since many years I was using it. But this is a slide from Julia Lerman's course from Plural side. What we can do is the SQL Server or any database specific like SQLite or Azure Cosmos or anything like this is a specific database that has got a dependency on EF core relational and that has got dependency on EF core. That means if you bring in this guy, he's going to bring his friends and family members along with him. That's what is being communicated in this slide. And we'll see that live. So if I'm coming back to this college app, I will close this guy. I'll close this guy. Let's go to this persistence folder. And inside this persistence folder, if you see that, now let's compare this. First is EF Core SQL Server. I bought EF Core SQL Server. And that guy is bringing in EF Core Relational. So that guy is bringing in EF Core Relational. And that guy is bringing in EF Core. That guy is bringing in EF Core. So that chain, it's getting. So that's the first tip. And it was really, I was so happy. And how do you do the connection strings? This is very nice thing. When I saw this for next 1 hour, my head was spinning. Hey, no one told me this is what we can do. See this, it's so nice. Where is that coming in from? Okay, this connection string. It's in dependencies. So third-party dependencies, right. So see this. In this third-party dependencies, use SQL Server. Did I put it here or in some other place? Where did I put it? Just give me 1 minute, guys. This is very, very important. Yeah, here. See this. 2 ways to access this. What we generally do is, if at all we have to write the connection string, what we will do is, we'll get the connection string from the configuration get connection string and pass it to use SQL Server. That's one way. This is another way which we can do where you don't need to specify the connection string at all. So I'll show you this. First method, I'll show you this one. Where I have this, I came to know 24 hours ago, yesterday. See this, I have a connection string, school app DB connection. I have a connection string, school app DB connection. I'm retrieving it from the connection string and passing it. So that means technically inside the use SQL Server, this string, whatever is going, is getting injected. Let's see this in a minute. And the next one is a big ticket item, the dependency injection. Wow. I love that concept. So we'll see that in a minute. Just give me a minute. So, wow. Come on, come on, come on. I need to push this guy. Okay, so now I say that get courses and try it out and get the courses. Come on. Delete the database. Hope I didn't. Okay, so we got these 3 records. Okay, so I found that we don't need to do this. All we can do is write down the name with the connection string which is there inside the app settings. So sorry, connection strings name inside the app settings. So all we can specify is name equal to this connection string. So this technically, it also goes and it reads the connection string. That was so very happy moment when I came to know that, oh, this guy is reading it. Okay, that's cool. So let's go back and see the other method also. We commented the previous one. Now I go and execute this again. And it should technically do, okay, we'll discuss about the extension methods and dependency injection.
Yeah, just a quick time check here, Swamy. We've got about 9 minutes roughly.
So, yes, I think I should be done. Looks like I'm covering 1 or 2 topics more than what I planned. It was like I was running at like an express train, non-stop. Okay, so we are getting it. This is another tip. So the third one is pretty I really liked it because I struggled a lot. And specifically thanks to Julio Castle, who gave me this command. What happens is when you have the DB context and API bundled it will be very easy for you to go and do a migrations. What if you have the layered architecture? So where you have this separate and you have the API separate. So what I'll do is I'll just go and delete it, these things. So I'll come back to the package manager console. So let me do a PWD. I'm in the persistence folder, exactly in the database folder where I need to be. Here itself I have the DB context. So what is that is right now we are in the package manager console, exactly in the DB context. So it has got everything to create it. So not to waste the time, it will not work. So I just added -v to be verbose. Why it is not working? If you execute it without -v, it gives a error message, but it doesn't give you a clue. So I was scratching my head and then realized that I don't have hairs. So I stopped scratching and asked for help. So here, when it is verbose, it is spitting lot of the content. But if you don't use verbose, it gives a message saying that it failed. It's unable to create it, but the build will be success. But just before creating, it fails. So you will not have any clue why it is failing. So it gives some message. Okay, so whatever it's a message. So when I went back and saw that, I mean, Julio gave me the command, but apart from that, to know what is happening under the hoods, I executed with verbose. So when we go with the verbose, what happens is it marks the project as persistence. That's true. That's correct. But the startup assembly, it marks again it as the persistence, which is not true. The startup project is the assembly. So this is what the command which will do the magic. Understand this. Here I'm using EF core migrations. I'm not using add-migration, the tools. I'll show you the difference in a minute. So here I'm using the EF core. So let it do this, and let me go ahead here and check whether the database is there. If the database is there, I nuked it. So we don't have the database. So, and it creates migrations. What's that? This is the project I was working on. Ooh. Did some last moment.
Another quick time check for you, Swamy. We've got about 4 minutes remaining.
4 minutes.
I do see a really good question in the chat that I want to make sure we get to, and this comes from our friend Alan. He's asking about, have you taken a look at performance benefits when using Dapper, the micro ORM, instead of Entity Framework Core with minimal APIs? Is that a scenario you've looked at?
Oh, yeah, I'll come to this one. Okay. See, when we are speaking about the performance of Entity Framework Core, Entity Framework Core itself is pretty fast when we compare to the previous versions of Entity Framework, like from 6 and above. The performance is pretty good there. And Microsoft itself has published the numbers, how quick it is. Now, on top of that, when you're using minimal API, we did our own way of thinking, seeing the number of dependencies are less and the HTTP pipeline we are traveling is less. So definitely it will be faster. Based on the data which I read it should be much faster. Alan. Because every time Microsoft is releasing a new version of EF Core, they're doing huge number of performance improvement. There's a document which they published it where they specified how many new performance improvements they have introduced on this one. It will be much faster. So see this. Actually, I did the latest change. I forgot the golden rule of thumb. When something is working in production, do not touch it. But I did it. But this is a command which got executed. So let me go ahead and again delete the migrations for the benefit of people who didn't watch when I was switching. So I removed that. So see this. So based on that, we should specify. It's simple rule. We should specify the project as well as the startup project, because we didn't bundle the DB context into the API project. Now we are doing the layered architecture. If it is all-in-one architecture, we have different folders where we push these files. So in that case, it will work. So now another thing is we don't have the database. Now I can play mix and match. Now see this. This one I used .NET EF Core. Now I use database. This is coming from the tool. Okay. Now the previous one is from the .NET EF Core, the unicorn thing, the command. See, now it goes and does the migrations, and we populated some of the data. Now I can come back here, do a refresh. The college DB is here, and I go and look into the tables. And look into the data. So we have a couple of courses at least. I remember, yes, we have a couple of courses. So did I miss anything? Oh, how much time do I have? Scott, I want to show you one important point.
We'll give you about 30 seconds, and then we're at a hard stop for the show today.
Okay. I think I'll do it in the next one. I minimum need 10 minutes on that. It's a deep dive of dependency injection.
All right. That sounds good. Thanks again to all of our viewers for tuning in to today's show. Also, a big thank you to Swamy for joining us yet again to share his expertise. As a reminder, you can check out other .NET Live TV streams like this one over at dot.net/live. If you tune in next week to our show, we'll be joined by guest Ian Griffiths, who will join the show and talk to us about reactive extensions and what's happening with the maintenance of that project now that things have changed up a bit. Look forward to seeing you all next Monday, and thanks again.
Thank you.
Wow.